So Professor Rock is going to be presenting on engineering value, the returns to technological talent and investments in artificial intelligence. He's an assistant professor in the Operations Information Decisions Department at the Wharton School. He's a digital fellow at both the Stanford Digital Economy Lab as well as the MIT Initiative on the Digital Economy. All right, Daniel.
Thanks very much, Christy, and thanks to the lab for hosting me today. So yeah, I'm going to be presenting some work here that I think many of you have seen before in some way, shape, or form, but we're going to do the abridged version here, and also, looking forward to your questions and comments. So, Hal's not on here anymore, but some advice he gave a few years ago, right, is if you're looking for a career where your services are going to be in high demand, effectively, oh wait, whoops, is this okay here? Can you guys see that? All right.
It's back.
Moving around there. To paraphrase, basically seek to be an expensive complement to something that's getting rapidly cheaper. Now that's good advice for workers, but it's also good advice for firms. And that's effectively what TensorFlow is. So TensorFlow, in terms of what it actually is, it's a software package that lets you do deep learning really easily if you're not an extensively trained software engineer. I mean, even those of us in the lab can do TensorFlow, or it can do deep learning with the assistance of TensorFlow. But it also makes machine learning talent much cheaper, and that makes the expensive complements to machine learning talent that firms have more expensive. So we actually got Jeff Dean, who was one of the pioneers who created TensorFlow, to cop to this on campus at MIT. He was talking about AutoML here, saying that the current solution we have is ML expertise plus data plus computation. Can we get rid of the ML expertise component? Why is that? Well, Google's selling a lot of these things, data and computation. They have those assets, but the ML expertise was a bottleneck. I mean, some of these people are making millions of dollars a year at the time. TensorFlow is a shock that makes all of that talent, both on the intensive margin, making existing engineers more productive, and the extensive margin, bringing more people into being able to do ML engineering. TensorFlow is a tool that can do that. Okay, so the research question is, first of all, and this may be obvious to some, but to those who believe in efficient markets, that workers always get paid their marginal products, the question is, do firms also earn returns to their employees' technological investments? And if so, why or how much? All right, so we're going to think about the firm-specific intangible capital that the firms own, and then the complementary skills that the workers are bringing to bear. So think of this like a little bit like you buy a house and it's financed at a certain rate under the assumption that that rate's going to be available going forward, and then all of a sudden someone cuts your interest rate, your house value goes up. That's kind of what cutting the price on future ML development does for the value of those complementary assets. So there's a few different stories for how that can happen. It can either be productivity now or productivity later, or certain types of intangibles, specifically like exposure to machine learning being the reason that these firms increase in value. And I'll test a few of those. We'll kind of skip through monopsony as a possibility. There's a model I have that describes how that might work, but it's not the simplest explanation, so we're going to use Occam's razor on that. We're going to use LinkedIn data to do this. And then the punchline is basically Google rains money on all of the AI using firms at the time of the TensorFlow launch. So 4 to 7% increase in the market value of these firms. And if you do a more robust form of a difference in difference, use a synthetic differences in differences, or difference in differences, I should say, it's a $14 billion increase in the value of AI using firms on average. Okay. So I'll skip over what TensorFlow's architecture does, but basically you can write the same code once and then use it across many different platforms. When it comes out, it's a big surprise. Here's your Google Trends data. There's a big up and to the right effect, but there's a shock certainly when it comes out. You can see in the GitHub stars how much software engineers are using this stuff. TensorFlow rapidly eclipses even the most popular machine learning libraries when it comes out. Here's how easy it is to train a handwriting digit classifier. It only takes a couple lines of code. Anybody can use it. It's much more conceptual and less about the engineering. So we can see this in the skills data too. The minute TensorFlow comes out, people start adding deep learning as a skill. It goes exponential. So that's great, because then there's a whole bunch of firms that are using deep learning and ML broadly right before this comes out, and this launch increases the value of those firms. Here's a regression table that just hone in here. Those 1,000 coefficients, 1,086 or so, that's $1.1 billion roughly in the post-period increased market value. I do some other adversarial checks, like including a fixed effect for the firm and lagged market value, which typically isn't kosher econometrically because it biases coefficients towards zero. And the effect is a mere 800 million if you do that. So as a lower bound, that's still a pretty big effect. Okay, so here's some of the plots for what that looks like. We see that the value for these AI using firms grows over time. And if you take out the top quintile though, the top quintile of AI using firms, then the effects diminish substantially. So this is really something that's happening, emphasizing the advantages of already AI intensive firms, making them more productive with the TensorFlow stuff. We can check this. Is it deep learning? We get this pop up in value right after the launch. That's the launch in red right there. We can also test other skills to see if it's a total factor productivity effect. If we think if total factor productivity improves, then you'd see this jump across the board and lots of value, lots of values for other types of skills. It's not there for data science. It's not there for linear regression. Sorry to those of us who are economists. It's not there for management. Sorry, managers. I mean, managers are positive at least for most of the sample. Then it's not there for advertising either. So it's not an ad tech thing, but many of these firms are doing advertising. Now, back to that question of, is it some other exposure to machine learning factor where maybe you have an opportunity to automate or augment a lot of your workers? Turns out that's not the case either. It's really operating at the level of the engineer, because those firms that are most exposed to machine learning, if you run these in diff terms, you're going to see a decline in their valuations, but that happens later on. There's a bit of a lag for that. So it's not obviously a direct result of the TensorFlow launch. As I said, we can make this a little bit more robust, check it with synthetic difference and differences. That only emphasizes the size of the effect. It makes it bigger. So I'll skip over this for now, but this is a kind of a quick run through of this paper. It seems to be that these tools that make machine learning much more effective and cheaper to learn are enhancing the value of these companies as well. And happy to discuss further if anyone has questions or comments. Thanks.